Two in yet?
No. Hi, Thomas, are you there? Beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, we do not have a supplementary agenda this evening, and we have one disclosure of pecuniary interest, and it is Councillor Carmen McGregor, and it is with regards to Report 21A, the offer to purchase on Princess Street in the community of Tupperville. This evening, we have received one deputation, and this will be on the motion of Councillor Latimer. One second, sorry. There it is, 17B, the motion of Councillor Latimer regarding bike share program. This deputation was received by Larry Hutchins, who lives at 75 Mary Street in Chatham. The motion is an excellent opportunity for meeting several of Council's stated goals for the community. However, there are some items that need consideration before implementing this program. There are too many bike riders on sidewalks that travel at speeds that are greater than walkers. This puts both parties at risk of injury in case of a collision. Next, the narrow sidewalks, bicycle speed, and desire of bikers to stay on the paved sidewalks. This poses a risk for individuals with mobility issues who cannot move off the sidewalks when the bike rider or side-by-side riders are coming through. As well, with more bikes on the sidewalks, there is greater congestion and greater risk of exposure to COVID-19 to uninfected people. On Sunday alone, I had 6 bike riders that refused to social distance, deliberately rode beside me before I was aware of their presence. And when I moved 6 feet away, they took the space to the right side by side. Finally, the taxpayers of Chatham-Kent have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for the installation of bike lanes, which are not used by bike riders. There has been no effort to educate riders who choose not to use them or to enforce the use of them. Chatham-Kent prides itself on being an accessible and age-friendly community. Those priorities are as great as the priorities that makes the bike share program a good program. Before council creates a new level of bike traffic in the community, can we please have the individuals charged with keeping our streets and our sidewalks safe, directed to enforce the separation of bicycles and pedestrians so that all are safe? Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. We have the following reports that have been pulled by councillors. Item 13A by Councillor Sakachi. Items 13D by Councillor Latimer. 13E by Councillor Latimer. Item 14A has been, will have a presentation by Jim Hogan, the President and CEO of Integris. Item 15A will have a presentation by Dr. Colby, the Medical Officer of Health, and Teresa Bendo, the Director of Public Health. 15B has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi. Item 16C, Councillor Foss has indicated that he will be withdrawing his motion. Item 19A, the Good Neighbor Recognition Program, has been pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Carmen McGregor. Item 20A has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Latimer. Item 20B has been pulled by Councillor Oche and Councillor Harrigan. Item 21A has been pulled due to the conflict of interest by Councillor Carmen McGregor. And item 21D has been pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Wright. Therefore, the reports to be approved on consent agenda this evening are 12A, B, 13B, C, and that's it, BC. Item 16A and B, 17A, B, 18A, 19B, C, 20C, D, and E, and item 21B and C.
All right, well, with that, can I get Councillor Bondi and Councillor B. McGregor to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councillor B. McGregor, are you available for that?
Yeah, I'll second that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 13, tender awards.
13A, RFP Award R21-280, Chatham Capitol Theatre Audio System Replacement.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Crew, going to get you to move this, please.
Yes, I'll put it on the floor, Mayor Caniff.
I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Sakachi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just one quick question to Ms. Slater. I was just curious to see, is this type of elaborate system required here, or is there the availability to be, a less significant system in place, or is this something that would have to, be functioning for the capital to function at the appropriate level?
This level of system is absolutely required for a theater the size and scope of the Capitol Theatre. At the current time, the system we have in place is at the end of its lifespan and is, does not offer the minimum sound levels for optimal sound in the theater. This means that we end up renting a complete audio system several times through the year. And most rental clients, especially the bigger bands and the bigger artists, require much more than we have. So this will prevent us from having to bring that equipment in on an as needed basis.
And my last question will be, so I did read in the report that was stated. So for most bigger or larger groups coming in, this will be suitable for them, that the rental system will not be required for sure?
I would say I can't imagine any show that the system would not work for. It will absolutely be the best possible fit for this theater.
And
Sorry.
no, you go ahead. My apologies.
I was just going to say that the system that's currently in place, some of the components will be able to actually use at the Kiwanis Theater, which is a smaller theater in terms of, the size of venue and capacity, and also the type of artists that tend to perform there. We can still reuse some of the old components at the Kiwanis Theater, where it would be a more appropriate system.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Ms. Slater.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Okay, all votes are in and motion passes. Moving on to 13D, Tender Award, Contract T21-262, Fifth Concession Line over Horton Drain Culvert Replacement, Community of Romney.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move this, please?
Certainly. So moved.
Councillor Wright? Councillor McGrail, can I get you to second this, please?
I sure will.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, the floor is yours.
Thank you through the mayor. I actually sent this through to Mr. Faulkner. It was with regard to both 13D and E, both the tender awards for Fifth Concession Line over Horton and the Purdy. I wondered if in the reports going forward, he could comment on how long the duration of the work is expected to take once initiated. In other words, how long the D2s are expected to be in place. So if I think Mr. Faulkner is on the line, if he could let us know about 13D and then 13E.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for that question. Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So yes, for the fifth concession line, the construction is going to take 6 weeks. Please note that for a lot of our bridge projects, we do allow for a 2-year construction window, which has been proven to reduce costs by giving the contractor the flexibility to fit it into their schedule. So at this time, we don't have a start date, but once we do, we'll make sure to update on our project website, which just as a reminder, for updates on this project and all other projects, please visit chathamkent.ca/construction projects.
Thank you, Brendan, for saying that, because I think it's really important for any interested parties or neighbors of these construction projects, that just for planning purposes, to know what's being planned over the next 2 years, and then to know where to look to see if anything will impact what they're doing on their properties. So that's all I have for that. And I'd be glad, Mayor Caniff, to move the following item as well, because I have no further questions with regard to either of these items.
Okay, I see no other questions. We'll put this one to vote, and then we'll call the next one in a second, but I won't go to you on that one. Well, I actually, we need to get the answer for the question on the other one. So I will put this one to vote.
Council, just waiting for one more. I believe there's 16 of you logged in now. Just make sure you've hit submit. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 13E, Tender Award Contract T21-231, Country View Line Culvert over Purdy Creek Drain, Culvert Replacement, Community of Chatham Township.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor McGrail, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
I will second.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, you want to ask your question then on this one as well, please?
Same question, Mr. Faulkner. How long would the work would entail once it got started over the next 2 years?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This one is an 8-week construction. We've also put in the tender, this one still has the 2-year construction window, but they have a completion date of either September 8th, 2022 or September 8th, 2023 to get the culvert done so that it's Center Side Road and Country View Line are opened for the fall harvest.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Brendan.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in and motion passes.
Item 14, Integris.
14A, 2020 Integris Annual General Meeting Report. And we have a presentation from Jim Hogan, the President and CEO of Integris.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to all of council. My pleasure to be here to make this presentation. Now, I do believe someone will be taking charge of the presentation, putting the PowerPoint up for me.
Yes, we can hear you, Jim, and we are just working on getting that presentation up for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Great. I see it. So I'm assuming that all of council and the community sees it right now. So again, thank you very much for allowing me to be here and make this presentation, give all of council and the community an update as to our operations in the last year and presenting our financial statements. So the next page, please. Next slide. As many of you know, Integris has 4 subsidiaries. Our largest subsidiary is the Integris Power Lines, and that's our core business. That's the distribution business, and we're regulated by the Ontario Energy Board. And the Ontario Energy Board does a review and a ranking, an efficiency ranking of all utilities every year, and we continue to be in the second cohort, so the second group. So that means that our costs are between 10 and 25% lower than what the Ontario Energy Board would propose or would recommend that we have through their analysis. So we're very proud of being in that group and continuing to provide an efficient service. Next slide, please. Thank you. Health and safety is a key core of Integris, and we're focused with our employees as well as the customers in the community. We work very closely with the Industrial Health and Safety Association, so the IHSA, and we get certified in their certificate of recognition, their core standard. And in the last year, we had a 96% score. That's on our internal audit. So what it does, it really shows that our employees understand health and safety. They know our policies, know where our policies are, and do everything they can to follow them. And as you can imagine, we have significant training each year to do everything we can to keep our employees and the communities as safe as possible. Next slide, please. Thank you. We work hard and support the communities. That's a key driver for Integris. It's something that we do corporately, but as well as from all of our customers. All of our employees. It's something that we take great pride in. Last year, we provided over $400,000 in support to various agencies in the communities, and we listed a few of them there. And our focus last year was really around to those agencies that supported those in need. As we know, because of the pandemic, there was a greater need for those in help to pay their bills, whatever it may be. And we did a lot with the United Way and the Salvation Army in Chatham-Kent. Next slide, please. And also just kind of touching on our employees again, a lot of retirements. Last year we had 17 recruitments. We were very fortunate that 4 of them were internally, so we were able to do some promotions, but a lot of turnover going in our company and the industry as a whole. One of the good things, we have decreased the average age of our employees. We have some younger employees, but what we're doing is we're missing a lot of really good experienced employees. So it's a challenge for us. It's a good balance, but I think we're going to be better for it. But it is one of those things that is impacting us as we move forward. And then the next slide. Our customers, we've had some good customer growth. We've had over 800 customers, which is 1.3%, and which is good. We've got a lot of tools for our customers, for us to work with our customers that are done electronically. So our customers don't always need to make phone calls. We have what's called My Account. So customers can go on there, get their account balance, billing information, industry information. They can set up their new accounts, et cetera. So it really reduces the number of phone calls that we're receiving, and the calls that we do receive, we're able to provide more and better information. So it's worked out really well using the electronic tools, and our customers are very satisfied with the service we provide them. Once again, we're at a 93% customer satisfaction. Next slide, please. We invest heavily in our distribution system. Last year, we spent about $15 million. Like most utilities, the systems have been in place since the 50s and 60s, so they need to be modernized. And 3 such projects, conversion projects is what they're called, that we've done in Chatham-Kent. We spent some time in Ridgetown, and we had a couple projects in Chatham. Now, we do various projects throughout the community, but those are the larger ones. And what we've been doing for a few years now is we've done some pilots on smart grid projects. And this is where we get smart technology out in the field. And if there are outages or some challenges, we can get information much quicker, as well as many times the smart technology out there can make adjustments to the system on its own. So we don't need to roll trucks. And last year we spent some time in Ridgetown and Thamesville to invest in those smart grid projects. And we're going to continue to be doing a few of those projects every year as we go forward. And then also, relating to the growth in customers, we've had substantial subdivision growth in all of our service territories. And I think, this council knows the nice growth we've had in Chatham-Kent, and something that we're very pleased to serve the new customers and serve those developers. Next slide, please. And then just a little bit about a couple of our other subsidiaries. The Integris Services Inc. That's really where we have our data center, which is in Chatham, and we have the fiber services in St. Thomas. In 2020, our focus for the fiber service was reliability and resiliency. So we're making it a much robust system. We've had some capital investments of about $500,000, and we've had customer growth of about 50%. So we're gaining a little bit of traction there. Our focus there is on the businesses, so the commercial customers, and it's working out pretty well. As far as our transmission company, it's not much change in the last few years. It's really there to support the renewable generation. It's providing a reasonable level of revenue and cash flow for us. So that's been working out well. And then the next slide. And then Integris Renewable, and that is our 15% investment in North Kent Wind. Last year, our cash disbursements were a little bit lower than expected. And that's because the overall provincial need for electricity was low. So therefore, generators were not running as much last year, and North Kent Wind being one of those. But we are seeing overall, while there is the blip here and there or movement occasionally, overall the investment still is quite successful. And as kind of saying, one year you might get a little less revenue, and the next year you're getting a little bit more. So it's working out very much as planned. And then the next slide, please. So then just quickly a little bit on our financial results. In many businesses, even the municipality of Chatham-Kent, we've had a lot of challenges with the pandemic. Yet Integris still had a strong financial year. Our electricity revenue surprisingly remained about the same. And then with the increased cost of the pandemic, we were able to offset those by all of our employees and the whole organization working hard to find savings. Many of those savings are short-term, so we will have to incur those costs, some of them this year, some of them next year. But everybody pulled together to find some savings and therefore minimize the financial impacts to Integris and to the company. Our debt level remains below the Ontario Energy Board deemed level, so we still have a strong balance sheet. And once again, we declared and paid a significant dividend last year. And the next slide, please. And something that as a corporation and all our employees are very, very proud of. Last year, we were awarded the utility, the LDC, Local Distribution Company Performance Excellence Award from our peers and our association, that being the Electricity Distributors Association. So again, that really highlighted the great work our team has done. More growth, more customers than ever, providing reasonable at a reasonable cost, as I mentioned, with the efficiency ranking, and doing everything we can to manage the costs and providing a good service during a very challenging year for all residents in all of Ontario. So it's something I'm really proud of our employees for being recognized, and the company being recognized last year. And the next slide. And just a few resolutions for the annual general meeting. The first off is approving the audited financial statements of December 31st. And these were approved by our board of directors at the April board meeting. And then the next slide. And the second AGM resolution is reappointing or appointing the board of directors. And there are the first 6 board of directors are directly appointed by the municipality of Chatham-Kent, and that's your 6 appointments as per our shareholder agreement. But as a shareholder, you're approving the full slate for the next year. And then the next slide is the final resolution, which is appointing the auditors for this upcoming year. It should be December 31, 2021, not 2020. Sorry about that. And that's the upcoming year. And that would be Deloitte LLP as our auditors once again. So that's my presentation. And again, thank you for your time tonight. And I have a few minutes for any questions that anybody may have.
Councillor Solomon and Councillor Sakachi, can I get you on the floor, please?
So moved.
Seconded, Mayor Caniff.
Well, Jim, it looks like you get off easy. You don't see any questions.
Well, that's great. Anyway, so I want to thank council for your support as our majority shareholder, and it's a pleasure serving this community. So our team is very proud to be an Integris employee and work with everybody and work in the communities we have. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Jim. With that, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Item 15, Community Human Services.
15A, the opioid crisis, presentation by Dr. Colby, Medical Officer of Health, and Teresa Bendo, Director of Public Health.
Good evening, everyone. I think Teresa is starting us off, so maybe we can get the slides loaded.
Yep, we're just working on getting those up. And there you go.
Okay. Okay. Today we're going to speak a little bit about drug criminalization, opioid use in Chatham-Kent, and harm reduction. Next slide, please. So as a result of a motion that was brought to council by Councillor Latimer on June 28th, Chatham-Kent Public Health was asked to come back to council with a presentation regarding the opioid crisis here in Chatham-Kent. So for today's presentation, we really have 3 objectives. The first, to provide an understanding of what it means if drugs are decriminalized, what the difference between decriminalization and legalization is, what are the benefits of decriminalization. The second is to provide some information about how opioid use has impacted the health of CK residents. And then finally, how Chatham-Kent Public Health's harm reduction program has changed in order to better serve our clients with opioid addictions. So I'm going to actually pass this over to Dr. Colby to speak about decriminalization. So next slide, please.
The idea about harm reduction is kind of a last resort of public health. That's basically an admission that we can't fix this, at least not now. And we want to minimize the harms that are associated with all aspects of whatever phenomenon we're talking about. When we're dealing with the opioid crisis, our biggest problem is the neuroplasticity of opiates themselves. They change the brain in such a way that there is no way known to change it back. So it creates a hunger, a craving for opiates once dependence is established that there is no cure for. There's just no way to deal with that. And people can control those impulses for a long time, but if that hunger never goes away. And it's sort of like saying, when can you, how long can you go without food and water? And when people suffer personal stress and circumstantial difficulties, they often return to drug use, even if they've been clean for several years. And because of the differences in potency in street drugs, and also a lack of recent habituation, then people can die easily under those circumstances. I don't think anyone could deny that we are truly in an opiate crisis. Our numbers are looking bad as a constant for the last several months, and they appear to be getting worse. There were 3 overdose deaths last week in Chatham-Kent, 3 in our community last week. So we must rely on harm reduction and also preventative approaches. And we must not forget that 80% of people that are opioid dependent became so using prescribed opiates by legitimate medical practitioners for specific pain control syndromes. And it's very important that we train our medical professionals to understand that there has to be very limited use of these compounds to avoid people getting hooked. Because once people start developing these cravings, then they often complain that their pain is worsening, and physicians with a natural inclination to want to help people respond to that and reinforce the growing dependence that goes unrecognized. That's a very simplistic approach, but I think it's accurate. Next slide, please. So the status quo of what we've got here is that the production, distribution, and possession of a controlled substance are subject to criminal sanctions with conviction resulting in a criminal record. And this has not worked. It has not worked anywhere, and that's not really a controversial statement to say that it hasn't worked. Decriminalization is when the laws are changed to have non-criminal consequences, such as fines and warnings for activities such as possession of small quantities of the substances that we're debating how much control to have over. So that just, it's still illegal, but it doesn't result in criminal records any more than a parking ticket would make someone a criminal. Now, full legalization is the other option, where there are no penalties at all, but regulatory controls can still apply, such as we have with alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis. So those are the differences in approaches. Next slide, please. In terms of the harms that we're trying to reduce from illicit drug use, we have criminal records which carry a terrible burden on individuals. There is the social stigma of being a criminal and carrying on criminal activities. This does nothing to alleviate high-risk consumption patterns that have their mortality, as we've seen. And this overdose and associated mortality is one of the biggest causes of death that we have right now. And it's been called the second pandemic that we're facing right now. Having to fund an ever increasing drug habit results in lowered socioeconomic status. And that creates all kinds of secondary problems. Socioeconomic status is linked to health in all kinds of direct ways. But I don't think I have to really elaborate on that. But one of the biggest problems is criminal behaviors, such as robbery, break and enter, and so forth, to fund the ever costly drug acquisition that dependent people face. And this results in social isolation and further alienation from society, and injecting under less than ideal circumstances, and the trading of sexual favors for money or drugs results in transmission of bloodborne and sexually transmitted infections, which are very, very difficult to deal with by our society. This is increasing the work of public health tremendously. Next one, please. So decriminalization aims to decrease the harms by removing mandatory criminal sanctions, replaces criminal sanctions with responses that promote access to education and safe treatment services, and frees up police time because it's no longer a police matter. So it has a number of positive spin-offs, but I think the removal of stigma and taking this out of the shadows of criminality and transforming it into a medical problem that needs to be managed in an appropriate manner is crucial to deal with this. Next slide, please. So there is evidence of harm reduction from decriminalization activities that have taken place in other jurisdictions around the world. So we see all of these problems being alleviated. A decrease in criminal records, a decrease in social stigma, fewer high-risk consumption patterns, less overdose mortality, increase in socioeconomic status, decrease in criminal behaviors, which benefits everyone in the community, and transmission of bloodborne diseases and sexually transmitted infections goes down as well. This is a win-win proposal for everyone. And this is not law in Canada right now. The criminal code is a federal legal jurisdiction. But this decriminalization or legalization approach is certainly not a radical, non-mainstream view in addiction medicine right now. All of the various organizations that are involved in advisory and expert roles in addiction medicine have embraced this philosophy. The Chatham-Kent Board of Health has adopted this as an official position of the board. This is also the position of our Chief of Police, Gary Kahn, and our Chief of the Emergency Services, Donald McClellan. We are all in agreement, along with public health, that this is the way to go. Next one, please. So this requires changes to the federal criminal code. And it's interesting that I haven't seen any questions on this posed to the people that are running to be our federal member of parliament. But this is something that really should happen. We are in an opioid crisis, and anything that you can do as counselors to further this agenda would be very beneficial to our community and very beneficial to society at large. Thank you for listening.
Okay, next slide, please. While this is a very busy slide with a lot of information on it, there are really 4 points to take away from this slide. As Dr. Colby said, we are indeed in crisis. The rate of emergency room visits and the death rate due to opioid poisoning is greater in Chatham-Kent than it has ever been, substantially greater. Fentanyl is the most common opioid contributing to those deaths. And young men 25 to 44 years of age are at greatest risk. So Ontario's opioid crisis has worsened dramatically during the pandemic, with the homeless population and those who are unemployed accounting for a significant portion of fatal overdoses. A report released in May of this year by the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network really indicates that fatal opioid overdoses in Ontario were up more than 75% after COVID-19 hit in 2020, as compared to the year before. And certainly Chatham-Kent is not immune to the opioid poisoning crisis. Over the last, say, 5 years, rates of healthcare utilization and the death rate related to opioid poisoning have increased locally. Prior to about 2016, rates were relatively stable, and the local death rate was far below provincial average. But now the rates of ED visits are nearly 1.5 times the provincial rate, and deaths here in Chatham-Kent have climbed to match provincial levels. Our local EMS calls related to suspect opioid poisoning also show a similar increasing trend. Calls for service of this nature are becoming more and more common, especially over the past year and certainly over the past week. June of this year saw the greatest number of ED visits and EMS calls to be reported in a single month. And absolutely keeping in mind that these data only show the tip of the problem, as many poisonings go unreported. The death rate in Chatham-Kent has nearly doubled during the pandemic period alone, where there were 18 confirmed deaths from April of 2020 to March of 2021. This rate of death surpasses the rate of any other category of death due to unintentional injury in Chatham-Kent. And again, fentanyl is the most common opioid contributing to deaths, both locally and provincially, and young males appear to be most at risk based on the information about the deaths here in Chatham-Kent. Next slide, please. The 4 pillars approach is recognized internationally as an effective way to address the harms associated with substance use. It uses the 4 pillars of prevention, harm reduction, enforcement, and treatment to really form a balanced, solid foundation on which to build a comprehensive community drug strategy. And public health's role really sits primarily in the areas here in green: education and prevention and harm reduction. And so the focus of the rest of this presentation will be on our role in harm reduction. Next slide, please. So we have a key role to play in many aspects of a drug reduction program. And such a program includes a number of things: health promotion strategies, policy advocacy, a needle syringe program, naloxone distribution and a training program. Key to success is a peer support program, medication-assisted treatments, which are in this community are provided by others, and supervised safe consumption services. So when Chatham-Kent Public Health does their work, our goals really do include advocating for the uptake and increase in harm reduction services. It includes increasing awareness and understanding of harm reduction in the form of our health promotion programs. It includes preventing and reducing the incidence of opioid-related harms and overdoses or poisonings. It includes improving the management and response to overdose events through education and naloxone distribution, and reducing stigma and discrimination associated with substance use. Next slide, please. So Chatham-Kent's harm reduction program has been built from a foundational partnership with Positive Pathways, previously named the AIDS Committee Windsor. And certainly our program has undergone significant change and expansion over our 23 years relationship. And most of that change has happened in the past 4 years, or at least since 2016. In the next couple of slides, I'll speak a little bit to how the program has changed in response to the increasing needs of our clients. But prior to 2017, clients here in Chatham-Kent were able to access supplies primarily from one bricks and mortar office, and with some informal outreach or peer component. And certainly that fit the bill for quite some time, but the program was evolving, or it has evolved to include an outreach portion and a peer piece in efforts to bring our service to our clients, to involve peers in delivering and shaping our service. And also in efforts to have a robust inventory tracking system in place, particularly as the program grows, for a number of reasons. That way we can ensure that on any one given day, we have the appropriate amount of supplies available when needed, that we're able to contribute to the province's inventory system, and that we can use that reporting and data to make changes to our supply distribution system. And it really has become a supply distribution system. Next slide, please. So while we started out quite small and modest, 2016 to 2017 was really the start of some significant expansion, which included a change in the model from bricks and mortar to a hub and spoke model, which now includes multiple community partners, pharmacies, the public health clinic, an outreach component that's focused on building a local system that really supports the provincial system. While the transition from an office in Chatham to this hub and spoke model may have seemed initially like a loss to the community, funding challenges and really the need to provide a program across Chatham-Kent was the motivation for this change. And certainly this model has really proven to be effective and reliable in other communities. And as we have experienced in this pandemic, mobile outreach and close to home services can provide better accessibility to clients across Chatham-Kent. There are a number of organizations that provide outreach for harm reduction supplies here in Chatham-Kent. Those being Positive Pathways Community Services, the Windsor-Essex Community Health Center through the Hep C program, and Rock Missions. So currently these days, this program as a whole distributes anywhere from 150,000 to 200,000 harm reduction supplies a month. So really upwards of 2.4 million on an annual basis. So this kind of model does not work without the commitment of all partners involved. And there, I think, are three key partners that I want to acknowledge who have been part of the milestones for this project or for this program. Steve Pratt, when he was in the capacity of the coordinator at AIDS Committee Windsor. His efforts really established our first satellite sites, and that set the stage for what we have today. The next person I would like to acknowledge is Dylan Marlett at Shoppers Drug Mart in Wallaceburg. Her location was our first satellite site, and without her, this program would not exist. She and her staff have been with the program throughout all of its growing pains. And next, Rock Missions. Rock has had a significant impact on the outreach portion of this program or service. They began working with us just prior to the declaration of the pandemic, and their work has grown exponentially. So currently, about a third of our supplies are distributed, frankly, through Shoppers Drug Mart in Wallaceburg. About a third are distributed by Rock Missions, and the final third by public health and other partners. Next slide, please. There are no better experts in service delivery than those who have lived or are living with experience with substance misuse. So in collaboration with Rock Missions and the United Way of Chatham-Kent, Chatham-Kent Public Health applied as a with these folks as a collaborative for a community opioid capacity building project or a peer support program. And the goal of that project is really to expand peer-led outreach interventions here in Chatham-Kent. This is the first year of a 3-year project, and we're really looking forward to all the great things this program will bring and the success of this program over the next 3 years. In 2017, we launched a naloxone distribution program where organizations partner to provide naloxone kits and training to clients. And this is part of the expansion of a provincial program funded by the province and mandated to public health units. Next slide, please. On a monthly basis, we provide a surveillance report to community partners, and have a protocol in place to alert agencies to heightened risks in the community. And we continue to look for ways to expand upon this system, and we'll be certainly looking to our peer support program to provide that perspective to our surveillance system. To achieve any substantive change on issues related to drug use, we need a fundamental change to our drug laws. In 2018, the Board of Health called on the federal government to decriminalize the possession of all drugs for personal use and scale up prevention, harm reduction, and treatment services. And most recently, our Alpha Association put forth a resolution to treat opioid crisis as a public health emergency. So really looking at ongoing ways to advocate for advocacy. Thank you. Next slide, please. And I guess the future for our program, this slide really speaks to a number of things as next steps for Chatham-Kent Public Health. Those being kind of an expansion of the community needle disposal locations, the facilitation of a community drug strategy, future opportunities for client engagement and peer support, contemplating safe drug supply. But really at the end of the day, Chatham-Kent Public Health program really strives to reduce the risk of drug poisonings, connect people to social services such as housing, employment assistance, and food banks, to provide or connect people to healthcare and treatment, to reduce public substance use and discarded harm reduction equipment, to reduce the spread of infectious disease and reduce the strain on emergency medical services. So this means our program will continue to evolve, and some of that evolution includes what is on the slides. So I think I will stop there and open for any questions folks have for Dr. Colby and myself.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just want to say thank you for the report. I know that this is a really complex and challenging issue in our community, and you know, there's a lot of community partners, a lot of folks in public health working really hard to lessen the impact on our community. As much as we work tirelessly locally, I think it's hard to ignore that we're caught in a national and regional pattern of increasing opiate use and issues with supply and issues with increasing overdoses. And I think that while we look at the things we can do locally, it's also important to recognize that we should be vocal about things that can be done at other levels of government. So I'm sure we'll go through some other questions, but I do have a motion that I wanted to make that I sent in advance as well. And it's that Chatham-Kent Council endorse a decriminalization approach to drug policy and send a letter to relevant federal and provincial partners outlining this endorsement, as well as a summary of the current situation in Chatham-Kent and the need for further support for harm reduction strategies. And I know that we discussed this previously, and that's part of the reason why we're here having this report. And I think that you know, it's really clear from the report, and I think it's been clear for a while to those that are in public health, that decriminalization, as Dr. Colby stated, isn't a radical approach. This is something that's, you know, being talked about by the Association of Police Chiefs and by public health bodies. There's a recognition that we need to do something different, and that part of that change needs to come from legislative changes, and those are things that we need to push for. So, you know, I'm thankful for the opportunity to follow up this report with this type of motion, and hopeful that we'll pass that tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Kirkwood White, will you second this?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd be happy to do that. I have a couple of comments I'd like to make after the vote or before the vote, whenever.
Okay, yeah, you might make your comments now, and then I'll go to Councillor Crew, who had her hand up as well.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Colby and Teresa Bendo on the progress that has been made in the last few years. And in support of their presentation, I'd like to speak to a few additional and significant local initiatives on this important community issue, which actually has been discussed for well over 13 years. As the former CEO of United Way, I made a presentation to Municipal Council in 2009 as a member of the Provincial Municipal Drug Strategy Coordinators Group on the local establishment of a framework for a drug strategy, which did speak to the 4 pillars of prevention, treatment, enforcement, and harm reduction. On March 29th of 2018, 9 years later, United Way resurrected the discussion with the hosting of a What's the Harm in Harm Reduction conference. It was a sold out free event with over 400 participants and an internationally renowned researcher and harm reduction pioneer, Dr. Mark Tyndall from BC, as well as a number of experts in the field and 15 presenters who were on the cutting edge of harm reduction based interventions in Ontario. Dr. Tyndall was at the forefront of North America's first legally sanctioned supervised injection site established in Vancouver in 2013. And studies since have shown that safe injection or overdose prevention sites, as they call them, save lives, reduce transmission of disease, and help people access addiction treatment and other medical services. Also, Teresa mentioned that Steve Pratt was actively involved in this process. As United Way's CEO, he was appointed to the Opioid Overdose Emergency Task Force in November of 2017, and he was quoted as saying, 3 years ago, the data tells us that the Erie-St. Clair-Lynn region will not be exempt from casualties in this crisis, and there are interventions we could be implementing to help reduce and prevent casualties from occurring. In working on the front line of the harm reduction effort in CK, I know that our region is struggling to get up to speed with the latest research and interventions that are available to help combat this crisis. It is evident that no one single person or organization will be able to slow this crisis down. We must work together. The conference that was held in 2018 tackled several key issues, with the root issue, as Teresa mentioned, being the stigma that surrounds substance use and the barriers that it creates to someone trying to move toward recovery. It is calling for drug policy to be guided by evidence and data, not by a desire to punish perceived immorality or by using disabling and social rejection as treatment goals. If we truly believe that addiction is a health problem and not a moral weakness, we need to treat it like one. The evidence from harm reduction programs where people who use substances are treated with compassion and respectful care demonstrates that when people feel valued rather than judged, regardless of whether they continue to take drugs, they begin to value themselves more and are more likely to seek treatment. Once people feel safe and cared for, it's much easier to make changes that otherwise scare them. And as it has already been mentioned by Brock, it was one of my very first Board of Health meetings in March of 2019, where Jordan Lindsay and Emily Guerin made a presentation on a situational assessment summary for opioid use and related harms in CK. And I recall it was at that meeting that there was a reference made to the municipality endorsing decriminalization of drugs. So very happy to support Brock's motion tonight and to move forward in addressing this very important issue. Thank you very much.
Councillor Crew, did you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just have a question for, I think it would be Teresa. Thank you for the report. It answered a lot of questions, I think. A lot of people didn't understand legalization, decriminalization. What's the difference? It is complicated. But 2 budgets ago, we passed Councillor Brock McGregor's motion to fund a municipal drug strategy. And I know that we have been plagued by one crisis after another, from COVID and all of its controversy, and our community issues, Wheatley, Erie Beach. It has forced a lot of things to take a back seat. But I'm just wondering when we can expect that process to start. Like I said, it was approved 2 budgets ago, and I think that it's time to get moving on this.
Yeah, certainly. Public health has been plagued with the better part of 2 years of a pandemic. And certainly at this point in time, all of our resources, except for those where we need essential services, have been directed to the pandemic. So at the point at which staff begin to go back to their regular, well, in quotations, regular work, I can't commit to a timeline. This pandemic has been unpredictable and much longer than we ever expected it to be.
Absolutely. I understand that, Teresa. I just hope that it hasn't taken a back seat. Well, it obviously has to. But I think with those numbers and those graphs, we know what's happening in our community. We need the strategy to guide us. So, it's nice. It's nice we get the reports and we know what's going on and that things are happening. But I think that it's critical as well. But
yes, certainly knowing. Oh, sorry.
And I don't mean to sound like I don't. I know the work and the pressure that everyone's under. I just don't want it to get lost.
Yeah, nor do we. And certainly this will be one of the programs that is prioritized to come back sooner rather than later.
If I could just add ever so briefly, there is widespread recognition, not only by us, but by all of my medical officer of health colleagues in the province, that this is the second pandemic, and that we need to prioritize this issue as a major public health activity just as soon as we possibly can. So I wouldn't say, Councillor Crew, that it's taking the back seat. It's maybe in the passenger seat as opposed to the back seat.
That's a good analogy, Dr. Colby. Thank you. Thank you both.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put this to vote. We'll put it to vote. Sorry, Councillor Bondi, did you have a question?
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Mary Camp. Sorry, last minute there, but thanks for catching it. So just a comment, or maybe it's a question as well, I'm not sure. I've just read recently or heard on the radio that Walpole Island has declared a state of emergency because of opioid use problems, etc. And what they did is they asked the OPP to effectively ramp up the enforcement. So this would seem to be kind of going in the opposite direction of what that community, which is seems to be in the thick of things, is doing, rather than saying, let's lean towards, and I do understand the difference between legalization and decriminalization, but we've got Walpole Island saying we need more police enforcement to stop this problem. So that seems to run against, what we're talking about tonight. So that's really just a comment. The other point really is more of a comment too. With the legalization, and again, I do understand the difference between decriminalization and legalization. but the legalization of cannabis, in my personal experience, I see that that has caused a greater acceptance of cannabis use, especially among youth, as you know, I've got kids and stuff, so I see that. So my question would be, if we were to go, well, not us because we can't do it, but if the feds or the province did lean into the lane of decriminalization and maybe even legalization at some point, would it not, and again, this is a question, a little bit of an observation, would it not open the door to more acceptance of this type of drug use, in that once it becomes legalized or decriminalized, well, when things are not so against the law, they seem more acceptable. And again, I've just seen that with cannabis use in Chatham, or not cannabis use, but cannabis stores. And I'm all for it. It's great. Like, you know, knock yourself out. It's not really my thing, but I guess that's maybe a question for Dr. Colby. Is that's just a concern of mine, I'm sure of others, that when you do reduce the criminality of an activity that is effectively harmful and not good, does it perhaps, it's a rhetorical question, but does it perhaps increase the acceptability of such behavior? And by going down the road of decriminalization, would we perhaps be going down that road? And I'm not suggesting that we would or would not be, it's just, it is a concern. Thank you.
I would be happy to comment if the mayor gives me leave to do so.
Please do, but Dr. Colby.
Thank you. Walpole Island is a special situation. If it's under a health unit, it's under Lambton. It's not under Chatham-Kent. And that community is in crisis, no question about it. And they are reaching out for all of the help that they possibly can. And right now, we are stuck under the yoke of federal criminal law. So they are using that as a tool to try and help with that situation. The point of the presentation tonight was to show how hamstrung we are to bring this from the shadows into the light and treat it like a medical problem, to be able to help the maximum number of people. And it's the federal law that is curtailing our ability to do that at the moment. It's very difficult to compare cannabis to opioids. There are so many differences in their pharmacology and the consequences of their use. It's a whole different level of harm that we're actually talking about with regard to that. But the social acceptability, I don't think anyone would voluntarily choose an opiate addiction lifestyle. And although there are about 20%, 1 out of 5 dependent people that got so through the recreational use, that recreational use was encouraged by people that are known as drug pushers in the community that are making a living selling illegal substances. And at no point in time would there be, under any kind of legal change, the kind of scheme where these types of individuals would be able to operate outside of proper medical and legal channels. We believe that would very much decrease this 20% that they are actively encouraging people to start using by giving free drugs and everything else. And making drugs available through legitimate medical channels would eliminate the profit motive for the criminal sector, and hopefully that would cease. So I hope that answers your question. And the third point, I'll just tuck in before the end, is the forbidden fruit hypothesis. Cannabis was always kind of the bad thing to do, that you could kind of be a rebellious kind of person without doing too much harm to yourself. And I think we all kind of grew up in the era where those kinds of things were very commonly discussed. We don't want narcotics to be, and cannabis is not a narcotic. We don't want narcotics to become the forbidden fruit. And I think we have to design our public health messaging very carefully to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you for your question, Councillor Bondi.
And Dr. Colby, through you, Mayor Kenneth, thank you very much. That offers a lot of clarity to the questions and comments that I had. So thank you again, and thank you for being here this evening. Thank you.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Council, looks like we're still waiting for 2 more votes on that.
Oh, hi, Judy. That's probably mine. I closed my voting window.
Okay, if you
Mayor
just want to
Kenneth
let us know how you vote, and we'll make sure the record shows that.
Oh, sure. Okay, I'll vote yes, please.
Thank you. All votes are in and motion passes. Moving on to 15B, Affordable Housing Development 2021, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Rapid Housing Initiative, and Municipal Contribution.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Finn, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
So moved, Mayor Kenneth.
Would be happy to second that one.
Councillor Sakachi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I do apologize to Mr. Harper. I wish I had a little more time to ask him today, but very simple question. I know that the application was due by August 31st. I'm just curious to see roughly how long are we going to have to wait before we know if we're successful?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ray Harper, Director of Housing Services. We were told that we would know approximately end of October, mid to end of October, if we're successful in this application.
And just the last point of clarity too. So it's my understanding that we would have to have the funds together by the basically by March of 22. And with that, we would then be operating this facility in hopes by in March of 2023. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so we'd actually hope to have this building operating and by December of 2022. We have to have a 12-month construction window and from our signing, so that we would that's what we aiming for.
Okay, and the last quick question for you I had is that it did say that the only addition that wouldn't be actually a tax implication was a maintenance maintenance request. So with the existing life cycle, would that be then just funded by the actual the rent, like moving forward? I know that there wouldn't be a substantial amount of upkeep on a brand new building. I just wanted to see how that would that portion would play out.
As for the life cycle of the building in our operational budget, we have approximately $34,000 that would be set aside in a reserve annually to take care of future needs such as new roof, windows, and what have you for capital needs.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor Cannon, for the floor.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 19, Chief Administrative Office.
You missed the 16C, Council or Mayor. Mayor Cannon.
Sorry. Yes, under 16, Corporate Services.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 16C, motion of Councillor Foss regarding mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy for municipal employees.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm withdrawing my notice of motion because administration had been working on a draft policy before I presented my motion. In light of that, and in light of Dr. Colby's recent media release, strongly urging community employers to adopt a vaccination policy and to separate the operational versus council element of the way my motion was written. At this time, if it's acceptable, Mayor Hope, I'll call on Kathy Hoffman to provide information as to where we are in our employee vaccination policy status.
Kathy, can you provide an update, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to do so. I'll maybe start by saying that for the past many months, we have been communicating regularly with our employees about the subject of vaccinations. And to this point, we have taken an approach to strongly encourage our employees to get vaccinated if they are eligible to do so, citing the benefits of that and how it goes about keeping one another safe. As the local condition and the provincial condition have been changing on this subject, we too have been evolving our practice. And for the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have been working on a policy that will essentially try to draw that balance between making sure that we're providing a safe organization for both of our employees and for all of the customers that we serve. The policy is still in its draft form. We have some steps to take from here, Councillor. We wish to make some connection with our union representatives as well as some of our other stakeholders in the organization. And then we have a few details to be able to finalize before we're ready to share this information with our employees and move towards an implementation process.
Thanks, Kathy. Councillor Foss, anything else to add?
No, I think I apologize for calling you Mayor Hope. Sorry about that. Anyway, no, I think I have a notice of motion that I will be presenting when the appropriate time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 19, Chief Administrative Office.
19A, Good Neighbor Recognition Program.
Councillor C. McGregor and Councillor Latimer both had questions, so I'll call on Councillor C. McGregor first.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm just moving to an area where my husband's not listening to the ball game. Thank you. And thank you very much, Amy, for moving with this and bringing this forward. I'm very happy to see this coming to council. It was really a really great idea and initiative from a local community member. And I'm really happy to see that we're going to move forward and put this into place. I think if everybody's had opportunity to read the report, then you will understand the full gist of this neighborhood recognition program. And at a time when we could use some positive feedback and recognize those people in our communities that are doing amazing things to help each other out and help others in our community. I think there's no better time for this to come forward. So those basically were my comments. I don't know if I can give recognition to the person who's brought this forward. Mayor, you can shake your head if I can mention her name. But I'm very happy to see this come forward and that we're moving forward with it. So may I mention her?
Well, I was just looking at myself because I would love to mention her name as well, but I'm not certain that she's given us permission to use her name. So I would wait. And
okay, so we will wait, and I would be very happy after we get this in. I will be one of the first on the website to maybe recognize her and fill out the form and the requirements to recognize her for initiating this program. So that enough said. Thank you.
Councillor Latimer.
Yes, through the mayor, I'd also like to say I'm in full support of this initiative, but I wanted to ask if there could be just a slight amendment to the process. I'm wondering if all of council can be notified prior to the nomination approval being publicly announced. Is that okay? You put that in there. Mr. Shropshire, I think, was going to comment on that.
Yes. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Worship. We can certainly take care of that. And as part of the process or procedure, we'll make sure that all of council is notified.
That'd be great. Thanks, Don. Do we have to move this report as received?
It's information, so we don't need a mover and a
Oh,
seconder.
perfect. Okay, thanks very much.
I just want to add to this as well. This is I think a fabulous thing for us to be doing. And I'd like to really highlight that it was someone from the public that suggested it. So they basically sent in through Let's Talk CK. They said, hey, we understand other communities doing that. Wouldn't it be great if Chatham-Kent did it? So we looked at it and said, what a wonderful idea. We made a few phone calls, and Tech Savvy stepped up to cover the costs of the program. And it's just a fantastic thing for us to be doing, the public to recognize there's so many great neighbors out there that are doing things for other people. So it's a small thing, but it's a great way to recognize people. So I want to thank the unnamed person as of right now, but Councillor Steve McGregor will be the first one to announce when she allows us to, and to celebrate this, and looking forward to seeing lots of nominations. Anyways, with that, I'll move on to the item 20, Infrastructure and Engineering Services.
20A, Proposal for Community Building Grant Fund Application, Pickleball Courts.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Latimer, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
So seconded.
Okay, and Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Latimer.
It's my retirement.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I guess I just had a quick question to either Mr. Quinton or Mr. Kelly. We know that we've had some discussions here on council already in regards to all the hard work that the Erio Community Association has endeavored to do to put in a pickleball court in Erio. And just curious to see if the project's already established, if there's still means for them to apply into a program like this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of IES. So the ECA pickleball court has been planned, and we're very close to signing an agreement. I believe it would be eligible for this program. However, we already have the funding according to the ECA available through various corporate donations, and there's no guarantees at all that we'll get this funding. This is only the application. We're asking for council approval to apply. The ECA has expressed very strong interest. They would like to have these courts established this year as soon as possible. So we're just waiting for the signed agreement from the ACA, and then we can proceed with the courts and the hiring of the contractor. There's no way that we'll get a receipt of any funding, even if we are successful. I don't think before the end of the year, potentially into the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Just a follow-up question. So if there's multiple aspects of this project and they've already worked so diligently to secure public funding, and let's say we are successful in the application process, could we not still proceed with maybe the third phase of establishing some funding through this initiative if we're successful?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd have to check on that first of all, but the intent is that we would use it to really grow. The application specifically requires that we are growing the asset and the overall use of the sports activity. So it would not apply to an additional phase because the court at that time would already be established. So this is new investment to really increase the usage of existing parks. I think it would be very difficult to look at phase 2 or phase 3 and say it's going to increase the usage of that particular park. Whereas these other applications, the applications that we're proposing is that they are at new sites with new opportunities for all residents.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I guess I'm just asking if it can at least be looked into if we are successful. Is that possible?
Absolutely, but the application has to be very specific. So what we're asking for is constructing pickleball courts up to 5 locations. So we would have to change the proposal here before you.
Okay, I guess I'll just leave it at that for now, and we can have a follow-up conversation as there is a little clarity that I'm trying to get to. But I did notice that the increments that you can apply for, is minimum of $10,000, and I think that every little bit helps. And communities, groups that have went and endeavored to do extraordinary fundraising and have actively pursued these, it would be very unfortunate to see that they're penalized for working hard as a group to raise funds and take that that stress off the municipality's funding, and then kind of being left aside from a funding standpoint. But that's just a single council perspective.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm saying it's all possible. We could do that. I would just, based on our procedures, that we would require a modification to what is before you here in order to consider that.
So what would the modification have to read, Mr. Kelly? Would it have to be that all pickleball courts municipality that are established or establishing be included in this proposal?
Yes, I would say we'd need maybe a fifth point that would say something along the line that we say in point 1 up to 5 pickleball locations. That you would have to say a fifth point, which would say something along the line that opportunities be reviewed to determine if funding opportunities could exist for other pickleball courts within Chatham-Kent as well. Incremental type funding. I know that the basis of funding again is to create new capital, new opportunities. So you can add that to the motion, and we'd be happy to look at that. And if it's not applicable, we'd have to check into this further. Actually, I do not believe, based on everything we know, that an additional phase would be applicable for funding.
Mayor Kane, if I may just ask, if it's not going to be a hindrance on the process, is it potentially possible to defer this to our next meeting so we could at least look at adding that fifth point? If it is going to be a hindrance to the process, I will make that motion now. But I know that when we're talking about these proposals, it's very precise on what the wording has to be. So because I don't have that in front of me now, I'm just wondering if we can defer this so we can look at potential wording for the fifth bullet point.
Mr. Kelly, does that create an issue for you if we were deferred to the next meeting to look at the wording and look into it further?
Yes, the application needs to be submitted by the 29th of September. So that's why we're trying to get it approved tonight. I don't know if Judy could advise when is the next meeting, please.
27th, I think.
Yes, the next council meeting is September 27th. So that would give 2 days unless there was something with the application that you'd require.
So I guess, Mr. Kelly, in the meantime, if you could prepare it as though it's and look into it, and if it's not feasible, I guess we just vote on it and say it wasn't feasible. But if it's feasible either way, it's more of you've prepared it and got it ready, and then can send it out the first thing on the 28th.
Yes.
Would that work for you?
Yes. So as an alternative, we could approve this tonight. We'll do some additional homework, and we'll advise council and potentially submit another follow-up report that the application will include an additional phase for the ECA.
And would you then hold submitting the application until after the, okay, Councillor Scotchy, does that work for you?
Yes, it does, as long as it's not a lot of extra work for Mr. Kelly.
Well, that's okay. That's what we're here for, is to serve. So it's no problem at all. So yeah, all right. I will look into that. I actually probably, we would need to call them on this one. Even this particular application, we called them, we spoke to the people in charge of the funding to ensure that these 5 pickleball courts would be eligible. They are, but they did talk about the new capital investment. So we'd need to get more details from the ECA, exactly what investment they would like to have in the amount on that. And we would then take that back to the community building grant fund folks and see if it would be eligible. If it is eligible, I would send in a second report to council. It probably, Mr. Mayor, it probably would be easiest just to say, add an item 5 here and say, if applicable, this would save me time.
Okay.
If applicable, add an item 5, if applicable, consideration for the application will be given to various phases of the ECA pickleball court.
Okay. That's just being typed up now. Councillor Sakachi, are you good with adding that?
Sorry, absolutely, Mayor Camp. That fits.
Perfect. Councillor Latimer, are you good as a seconder?
Yes, I am. I wanted to say that's why I wanted to
Okay.
talk to Thomas about that, if I could, through you right now, advocating for the ECA, because their second phase is for an additional pickleball court, along with stands and et cetera, and shade. But I don't know that I agree with putting actually the ECA, because there are other areas across Chatham-Kent who already have outdoor pickleball courts that probably would like to be considered for this program as well. And if we allow the ECA, I think we have to allow across the municipality. So I don't know if we just modify that number 5 to not just specifically say ECA, but all current or all, I don't know, current pickleball courts or eligible pickleball courts for phase updates. I don't know how to word it, Thomas.
So
But I think it's important I think it's important because as Councillor Sakachi has said, we have community initiatives that need to be recognized and could be expounded on with this provincial money. And I think it's kind of a slap in the face to those individuals who have worked hard to get their grant money, their private monies together to put these initiatives into their communities, and to have them exempted from additional grants. I don't think that's the way to go.
So if we could add on item 5, if applicable, comma, consideration will be given to apply for incremental investment at existing pickleball courts.
Yes.
In Chatham-Kent. Yes, I think that's.
In Chatham-Kent, yes.
I think most, because I could see other councillors would be wanting to have their communities
Okay.
considered. Yeah.
So Councillor Scott, you good with that?
Yes, Mayor Camp, absolutely.
And Councillor Latimer, you're good with that? Excellent. So
Yes.
we'll get it on the screen,
Yes.
that number 5. Meredith is busy putting that out together right now. And with that, Councillor Latimer, Councillor Scott, is there anything else you want before I go on?
No, thank you, Mayor Camp. I do apologize that I should have kind of touched base with Thomas prior to this, but it's just been a very busy week, and I know Thomas has been extremely busy as well, but I do apologize for not calibrating this earlier.
Okay. Councillor Latimer, you're done with your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'll go on to Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you very much. My questions, wanted to echo and say thank you to Councillors Sakachi and Latimer for covering most of the things I wanted to bring up. In the report and in your comments tonight, Thomas, it made it sound like the 5 locations have already been chosen. Have they?
No, they have not. Councillor Thompson, we looked at maximizing the amount of investment that we could receive, which is $500,000. We know from experience that the cost of every 2 courts is about $100,000. So it would be our intention that we then work with the communities of exactly, what would be the best location to put all of these 5 courts. Or we may even consolidate 2 of them to create 4 pickleball courts, for example. So that is still to come. This particular grant was thrown at us very quickly, as with a lot of grants. They asked for a quick turnaround. So we did the best we could to get it to council in time so that we can make the application on time. So that is work still to be done.
So can you kind of lay out the process and how that's going to work? How are the 5 locations going to be chosen? And how would an organization or a community express interest in being on the short list?
But thank you for the question. Mr. Mayor, what we would have to do, first of all, it has to be on existing parks. And secondly, we have to have the existing real estate to do so. So we would look at all of our different parks, where they're located, where they'd be most used. We would come back with a recommendation to council. We'll certainly do some public consultation as well, particularly with the various pickleball groups out there, and see where they would like to have them. But the actual final destination would come back to council, and we would make that recommendation based on the funding if we receive it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thomas, I'm very, very hopeful that the grant is achieved. I play a lot of tennis with a lot of people that play pickleball. It's an incredibly growing sport, particularly in the Southern United States. For seniors, and now it's actually caught on to, younger people like myself in their early 50s are even taking this up, like the young guys out there. So it's a great initiative. I really hope we're successful in achieving the grant. So just a couple of quick questions. When building these pickleball courts are, as you know, much smaller than tennis courts. So would the new builds, would they be tennis court size with pickleball lines? The reason I'm asking that is, as you would know, Thomas, 2 of the courts at McGregor High School, they've been not converted, but they're dual use courts. They're painted with pickleball lines and with tennis lines. So would that be the case with the new courts, or would they be simply pickleball courts dedicated to pickleball? And in that case, would the tennis courts be reverted back to just tennis courts? Because the lines are confusing for everybody, pickleball players and tennis players.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Bond. And so, as you know, I'm an avid tennis player as well.
I do know that.
I know exactly what you're saying about the confusion of the lines. So that would be potentially a consideration, especially if we decide to put these pickleball courts in the Chatham area or other areas where they're serving a dual purpose. It's a common complaint, although I think everybody appreciates having a court to play both pickleball and tennis at the same location. And certainly you increase your utilization. It's a bit of a challenge to differentiate the lines when you're playing. So that's a common complaint from all users. And that's something we really need to get into. And again, we will research this a little further, but that could be an option, that we have dedicated tennis, dedicated pickleball. It is a nice solution though to have both, but again, the downside is the multiple lines you have on the court. So I'll make sure that's included in the report that comes back to council.
Thank you, Thompson. As you know, sometimes those lines can work in your advantage when you can say, oh no, it was out. You play pickleball lines from time to time. So, but on a more serious note, my next comment was, I appreciate the other councillors bringing up the different locations in the municipality, because I know Pancor has a very strong pickleball usership on their presumably tennis courts. I played tennis out there a long time ago, but so that is an important thing that we bring in these other communities. Now, my next question, Thomas, there was some sort of talk, maybe a little bit of rumor mill stuff, about converting one of the courts, presumably McGregor, which is not called McGregor, so I apologize for that. I've been calling it McGregor all my life, but into a bubbled indoor tennis court facility with perhaps the current daycare being converted into change rooms, etc., which would be necessary. Is this the same grant, and is that idea now not happening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have been working closely with the Chatham Tennis Club and those who are very interested in creating a dome structure at McGregor tennis courts. This would provide year-round usage. And there is an opportunity right now for a grant equivalent to $200,000 from the Rogers funding through Tennis Canada that an application went in today to make that happen. We've spoken with Rogers and the group, and they are very optimistic we will receive the 200,000. The difference there is that that particular tennis court is not on municipal property. It's actually on school board property. So it wouldn't really apply for us. We could not make that application. However, there is another opportunity through Tennis Canada. We're making that application. It's our intention, if we receive the $200,000 from Rogers, we would like to form a group of stakeholders, which would include the municipality, the Lambton-Kent School Board, the separate school board, and St. Clair College, along with a potential operator where in Windsor, they have a very successful operation.
Yes.
We would like to form a partnership that we all contribute to some of the upfront costs and also the operating costs. So that's all contingent on receiving the grant from the Rogers funding. So that is not a debt issue. We just could not make that application for this particular grant because we did not own the land. But we are pursuing that. And again, that's another opportunity. There needs to be a lot of work done with collaborating, discussing with the various school boards and also St. Clair College. We would then come back to council once we have an agreement and make that proposal to council.
Great, and through you, Mayor Kenneth. Thomas, I know we're drifting away from the pickleball thing, so I won't go too far out. Excuse me. The Chatham Tennis Club and the McGregor Courts are both on school board land, so that knocks both of those out. And when you refer to St. Clair College, would you be discussing leaning into like a new build altogether for a bubble tennis court or domed, whatever you want to call it? Because neither one of those would be applicable, obviously, if they're both owned by school board, right?
If the answer is very quick, we are drifting
I know.
off on
I'm
this.
sorry.
So
yeah. You know what? We can save this, Mayor Kenneth. I apologize. I know I'm getting into the tennis thing here. Sorry.
I know. I want to know as well, but Thomas, we can we can follow up shortly to get the information out to council.
I think we're all looking for the next Leila Fernandez coming out of Chatham-Kent. And I think that's the reason for the excitement. So
her name's Bridget Bondi, and she lives in my house.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Bondi. I don't see any other questions. So we'll put this to vote.
Point of order, Mayor Kenneth. I have a question, if I may.
For some reason on my screen, these hands aren't popping up like they normally would. I have to turn over here. So it's Councillor Hall, followed by Councillor McGrail.
I think Councillor McGrail was up before me if he wants to go first.
Okay, Councillor McGrail, then Councillor Hall. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth and Councillor Hall. So I thought when I was reading this report on the agenda, I thought, what great timing, because those pickleballers in Pancor have been calling me, and gosh, they use that court a lot. And, you know, I implore you to talk to those members of the pickleball, but I also say talk to the members of the committees of the park. You know, Pancor Park Committee are great guys and girls, and you know, we've had this discussion, and I know with Councillor Bondi, he wasn't looking for dual purposes on a court, but out there, you know, we had a great discussion on being able to use that court as tennis, as pickleball, as playing hockey, road hockey, and basketball. So in that situation, we're looking for something that, you know, brings on more people and being able to do more things on that court. So to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just a quick question of clarification. When I read the report, I was of the understanding, I guess, that, and I think the way it read, was that the funding would go towards some new locations where pickleball courts are not located. So I guess my question, was that the original intention with the application, Thomas? In case I missed that.
Well, the key is, thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. The key was that we needed to create a growth asset. And originally we looked at 5 new locations. But then, to be honest, we got a lot of feedback that sometimes we don't have enough pickleball courts at existing locations. And the benefit of that is that you can start to look at tournaments and so on. So I think another complaint from the Pickleball Association is that typically we only have 2 to 4 courts at one location. So we were just trying to be as open. And again, I agree with the previous comment from Councillor McGrail. It's our objective to maximize the utilization of all of these courts. So we didn't have time to look at this very much. We have to get the application in. And it's not a condition of the application to say exactly where you're going to put them, except that you're going to put them in an existing park. And with that, the park will grow in use.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that clarification. So I guess with that being said, and no disrespect or anything about the pickleball courts, that makes sense. I appreciate that response. But I guess with the addition of the fifth point in this motion, would it be safe to say that a new spot somewhere in Chatham-Kent that you guys were looking at to put a new pickleball court in, with that change, with that fifth point, that something would fall off the list, basically? Would that be what would happen?
I hope not, but it is I guess it's a possibility. We need to get the facts and the figures on what these additions would be on the incremental investment and what each group is looking for. So if it's $10,000, the answer is no. But if we added them all up and it's $100,000, yes, one would fall off. But again, once we get the funding, we will go back to council and lay this all out for council for your approval.
Okay, and just one more question: Have we provided funding as council to pickleball courts that are currently in place now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the answer is yes. Like a lot of the courts that you see have been originally funded from municipal tax dollars, just like our arenas were and many of our other sports facilities. In the case of Chatham, for example, though, we didn't have to purchase the land. We developed a partnership with the local boards, but the investment, the original capital investment, and the ongoing costs for life cycle and also operations, we have been managing that from a municipal perspective.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the clarification, Thomas. Appreciate it. Thank you,
You're
Mayor.
welcome.
Okay, Councillor Wright.
Nothing there, Mayor. Thank you anyway.
Seeing no other questions, I will put it to vote now. Thanks.
All votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 20B, Tilbury Storm Sewer Master Plan.
Councillor Ochi had a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I do. Through you to whoever's going to answer this for me, I guess. I know we had people out for a public meeting regarding the drain that could go in behind Laurentia through the fields and behind Bolahan. I believe that is one of the items that is, I believe, 1 to 5 years away. Would that be the first item we're going to work on?
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. This is Mark McFadden, Manager of Infrastructure Services. So that is identified as the #1 priority, actually, in the master plan. So that is a Drainage Act process. So it has been initiated. It was initiated last year, which was when we had the on-site meeting. And the Drainage Department is managing that one. So they do have the topographic information done in their preliminary investigation. So at this point, I believe we should know more in the next week, but the design has been moving forward.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Do you believe that'll be done before the 5 years, since that is the first item on?
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Yes, it will be done. It should be done by within the 1 to 5 years. I would expect that the Drainage Act process should be completed in the next little while, pending any further investigations. So I would suspect that it would be completed or work started hopefully next year, but I don't know where they're at in the exact process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, see no other questions for that. That was an information report, so we don't need a mover and a seconder. We'll move to item 21, finance, budget, information, technology, and transformation.
21A, offer to purchase property identification number 005940012, Princess Street, Community of Tupperville. And we have a conflict with Councillor Carmen McGregor.
Councillor Foss and Councillor McGrail, can I get you to move this, please?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I will move.
So seconded.
All right, seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
Just waiting for one more. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 21D, donation policy.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, but I do have a clarification that I'd like Gord to make.
Yep. Councillor Wright.
I'd second that, and I have a question also.
All right, so Councillor Latimer, you have the floor, and then Councillor Wright.
Yes, thank you through the mayor. Mr. Could you just clarify in open the response you gave me earlier today? I did ask if there was any anticipated community drawbacks with this policy being formally instituted, because certainly the city has received all sorts of donations over the years with various parameters. And I was wondering if this the updated policy would encourage or possibly hinder individual or organizational interest in donating property and or items to or through the municipality going forward.
Mayor Caniff, Matt Torrance, Director of Financial Services. I can take this question if you like.
Yes, please.
So the donation policy just formalizes the statutory requirements under the Income Tax Act. So there's nothing in our policy that would prohibit anybody from donating that they would have been able to do before. This is just ensuring that we maintain our qualified donee status and we're able to continue giving tax receipts. If somebody wants to make a donation to the municipality and some of the clauses or one of the clauses in this policy would affect the way they donated, we can certainly work with the donee to come up with something that is compliant with the Income Tax Act.
Thank you, Mr. Torrance. I appreciate the clarification.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just had one question I was asked today on a donation to the BIA. Would it have to be made out to go through the municipal to get the tax receipt, or who's issuing the tax receipt for that? That was the question that they asked me. Maybe somebody can answer it.
I don't know if, thank you, Councillor Wright. Maybe Dave Taylor may want to chime in here, but I believe that the BIAs are considered a part of the municipality. So a donation to the BIA would be the same as a donation to the municipality.
So it would have to be made out to the municipal then?
That would be that. Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, we'll put this to vote.
And all votes are in. Motion passes.
Okay, we'll go to notice of motion. We have two of them, Councillor Foss, followed by Councillor Sakachi. Councillor Foss, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My notice of motion deals with vaccination policy for members of council and committee members. I, Joe Foz, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion for tonight's council meeting and requesting waiving of the notice period for discussion and voting. Whereas the safety of staff and public is paramount importance, whereas vaccines provide an additional layer of protection against COVID-19 and have been demonstrated to be effective in preventing serious illness and reducing transmission and hospitalizations. And whereas provincial data has confirmed that COVID-19 Delta variant is fueling a fourth wave of infection. And whereas Chatham-Kent has been a leader in the COVID-19 response and vaccination rollout, and whereas numerous other municipalities, institutions, and public sector organizations have or are in the process of implementing a COVID-19 vaccination policy for employees, and whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent is developing a COVID-19 vaccination policy for all employees, therefore, Council direct administration to prepare a draft COVID-19 vaccination policy that would apply to members of councils and return to council by the October 4th council meeting. And council approve that citizen volunteers appointed to advisory boards, committees, and local boards be notified that those volunteers must provide proof of full vaccination or medical exemptions prior to the resumption of in-person meetings in order to take their seats at those meetings. That's my notice of motion, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, here provide notice. I'll be bringing the following motion forward for voting discussion at the October 4th meeting of council. Whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent is currently experiencing a significantly increase in development and building permit activity, and whereas council has approved a growth strategy, including the approved CIP, which has incentivized new growth such as new multi-dwelling units, and whereas the municipality wants to ensure it's continuing to provide a high level of service to residents and developers that support our strategic growth goals, whereas the municipality's goals is to have a safe and healthy and presentable community, and whereas residents are stating some property standards requests are not being resolved or addressed for months, which has been substantiated by administration due to the backlog, prioritization, and emergency situations. Be it resolved that administration provide a report to council that includes the following: identifying creative approaches to fulfilling the backlog and property standards issues, investigate funding avenues and costs and feasibilities to hire additional building inspector / bylaw enforcement officer, and investigate both on a temporary and permanent basis.
Thank you, Councillor Sakachi. I apologize, Councillor Foss, that we'll go back to you and we will put that up as far as we first need to vote for the 2/3 to accept it tonight. So if we can put that up on the screen.
Thank you.
Councillor Foss, you want to make any comments about this or just?
I guess I don't have any comments on the waiving, except that time is at an essence, and we need to deal with this as fast as we can so that we can get going with this policy.
Okay, Councillor Bond, do you have any question related to the waiving the 2/3, or sorry, waiving the notice period?
No, Mayor Caniff, it's about the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we'll put this to vote then. Oh, sorry, we need a seconder for that. Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other questions related to this? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in and motion fails. It was 11-6 and therefore we did not receive the 2/3.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to, sorry, Councillor Foss.
Just a question, and this notice of motion will be on the next agenda meeting then?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the council information package. Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. There is a reference in the information package to the work of the Chatham-Kent Child and Youth Planning Network, referenced by Kelly Emery and Rachel Barron. They have engaged over 30 community partners in representing local child and youth focused organizations and community partners on the issues of early childhood development, middle years, and supporting youth and youth engagement. They're requesting that a letter of support be forwarded to the federal government with regard to their support prioritizing childcare. And I would like to encourage our council to support that. With the understanding that when the letter goes, assuming it gets approved, that we be careful about who we send the copies to. The draft copy referenced some candidates that are running in the federal election that are no longer running in the federal election. So if we could just correct that error on the draft copy.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that?
It's Councillor Latimer. I second that.
Okay, Councillor Latimer. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put anyone opposed. Motion carries. All right, we'll go to Councillor Latimer. You wanted to pull 4F.
Actually, I think it was 4A. With regard to the response to Maggie Downey from the Honorable Ross Romano regarding cemetery funding. I wondered if we were he's saying he's thanking us for our response, but also asking if we are part of the consultation. So I want to ensure that we were.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of IES. So I spoke with our manager of cemeteries, and with respect to the consultation, he did not receive the notice in time to provide the consultation. However, the consultation asked for a letter of support, and that's one that we already provided. We provided that through the clerk's office on July 6, 2021. Which essentially supported, it was originally moved by yourself and seconded by Councillor Finn, but essentially that we are strongly supporting that all of these abandoned cemeteries within the boundaries of Chatham-Kent, rather than us taking over 100% of the responsibility financially, that we receive some government funding. So we fully agreed with the resolution from the Council of Rideau Lakes. So we feel strongly that even though we weren't part of the official consultation, we did get our voice heard. And essentially at the end of the day, they were just asking for a letter that we had already sent in. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, Councillor Kirkwood White and Councillor Latimer, can I get you to move all the other items on the council information package?
So moved.
So seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go to non-agenda business. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This is really time sensitive, or I would have brought it up as a notice of motion, but it's simply Lori Marshall, the CEO of Chatham-Kent Health Alliance, is applying for to the Ontario Health Centre of Excellence in Mental Health and Addictions for residential withdrawal management services. It's really important that our community be considered for this, and a lot of our agencies and partners that we know have been sending letters of support. I think that as a council, even after the presentation we had tonight, it is extremely important that we show our support as as a council to the provincial body to get this funding in our community. Right at this point, there's 0 residential treatment beds here in Chatham-Kent, and anyone who needs or wants voluntary withdrawal services, if they're lucky to get a bed somewhere else, I'm not going to get into all that, but it's a barrier to those who are facing detox. I would like to, I think the letter was sent out to everyone today, so I would like to just make a motion that council submit a letter of support to Chatham-Kent Health Alliance for their proposal for residential withdrawal management services.
Councillor Kirkwood-White, will you second that?
You're right on me. Thank you.
All right, questions relating to this? I see a number of hands up. Are all these hands related to this?
Can I add, Mayor Caniff, that it is important that they get the letter of support by tomorrow?
Okay. Councillor Pinsino.
No, not on this, Your Worship. It's on something else.
Seeing no other questions, anyone opposed to this letter? Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, so Councillor Pinsino.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thames will put on a big car show there on the weekend. Well attended, both cars and people coming through the door. It was awesome. I'd like to put a big shout out to the Thamesville Improvement Association, Sonoma Club, and the Thamesville Firemen. The groups all got together, worked hard, and put on a good show. Anyway, they did a great job, and we're hoping to do it again next year.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to see if it was possible, if some collaboration between Mr. Kelly's group and public health in regards to, there's a lot of conversation stemming from the arenas in regards to the occupancy levels and the provincial direction, as well as different policies that are being handed down from the different associations. And I'm just wondering if it's possible that we could release something in either a media release on social media, just to kind of go over the process and how we're going to handle it. I know that some organizations are requiring their coaches as well as their players to be fully vaccinated, and I just think that there's a lot of unclarity about the situation, and each municipality is doing things a little bit differently, and I just think it's important for us to kind of get on the on the outskirts of this immediately and just release a media statement to say exactly what we're going to be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start, and maybe my colleague April Reed, I would like to jump in. It's Thomas Kelly from IES. So we work extremely closely with public health on any of these directives, anything that comes down from the province, and the changes in capacity that you've seen has been a result of those discussions. We've worked, we can release something publicly if you like, but we're actually working with the user groups and establishing a document to ensure consistency across Chatham-Kent. But I'm happy to do that. I just wanted to let you know that those actions are already in place, and we're working very closely with all of the minor hockey, figure skating, all of the coaches, the referees as well, to get the word out that these are the standards that we require. And of course, as many of you may know, that a lot of those changes are taking effect, I believe it's September 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm really appreciative to hear that there's a letter going out, just because today I've received numerous amounts of consultation from residents, and I think if we streamlined it, that would be very beneficial. So thank you for that.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Wheatley Relief Fund on their push dinner last night. I was speaking to some people, and not everybody even had their food yet, and they had served 550 people. So congratulations to them on pulling that off. And then secondly, I'd like to thank our emergency services, the firemen and the police and security guards that are in Wheatley 24/7 right now. keeping things controlled. Doing a great job as well as everybody from the night that the explosion happened, between the EMS, emergency people from Chatham-Kent and the ones from Essex as well. I know it wasn't just from Wheatley Tilbury area, it was across the Chatham-Kent. So I just wanted to thank everybody for all of their help with this event. Thanks very much.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. And actually, it was Councillor Sakachi that made me remember that I wanted to ask this question. So if I don't get an answer back tonight, I am fine. But if possibly Thomas can help me with this, or with April, all of our arenas, or at least our arena in Wallaceburg, has a QR code outside the building to help assist the process of family and sports members and team members going into the arena, which is the health questionnaire. My question is it easy or difficult to change that QR code? I know that with the QR code, it is still, though people are going on and filling it out, it's almost as faster for them to do the paper document. There are other QR codes out there, and I know one that is being used by the Board of Education, where they can fill this out in advance and then it shows that it's being approved. Right now with our process, at least in Wallaceburg, you have to fill it all out. It brings the check mark. You have to show the check mark. Then it has to be submitted after then. And anybody that doesn't have that, they have to fill out the paperwork and go through. And I know it is a bit of a challenge for our teams and our organizations that have to monitor this when people are coming into the arena to watch the game. So I understand if I might not get an answer tonight, but if it's an easy answer, I wouldn't mind and I guess my question is it easy to change that QR code to allow for that process to be taken place in advance for easy follow-up for whoever's monitoring the door to make sure that the confirmation has come through that they are okay to go into the arena?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's a good question. And I think really what you're saying is that the process we have, is there a way to improve it? And
yes,
certainly I'm extremely supportive of that. And I really need to take this back to my team and see what we can do. And we'll certainly, we'll get back to all of council on that. Again, that's really back to almost the former question. We're trying to develop best practices and also consistency across all arenas in CK. But thank you for the suggestion.
And if it's any help, Thomas, I know the person that mentioned it to me was through the separate system where they're filling it out, where they get that information. So you probably have contacts there that maybe you could touch base with.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've written it down and I'll follow up with my team tomorrow.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. A couple things I just want to add quickly. The first, I just want to add on to what Councillor Oche said. I was out at the event as well, and the community as a whole came together big time out in Wheatley. There was a ton of people out there showing support. And I want to just recognize as well, certainly all the people that Councillor Oche mentioned that you see out there each and every day on the street. It's the people that you don't see. There's a lot of other people that we really have to thank, that in April Reitdike's group and Thomas Kelly's group, there's a lot of people out there from there helping with housing and the A to Z of things. We have well over 100 municipal employees helping out there each and every day, and is taking up a lot of their time, which is, and we thank them all for doing that. As well, I want to remind everybody that the next council meeting on September 20th was a planning meeting, and because of the federal election, we've deferred that and putting the planning meeting with the 27th as well. So we do not have a planning meeting next Monday. With that, I see Jamie has, our Councillor McGrail has put up her hand for something as well.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Real quick, Dresden Arena, when can we expect that the ice will come back or will be back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will get back to you on that to give you a precise date. We are ahead of schedule with the contractor, but I would want to make sure that we have a definitive answer and that everything has been taken care of. So we're very close to reopening. I can tell you that, but I'll get a definite date and I'll respond to you tomorrow on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to add to my comments, Kathy Hoffman's group as well has contributed a significant amount of time in there as well. I apologize for leaving you out on that as well. So we'll go to the reading of the first and second bylaw, Councillor Solomon and Councillor Pinsino.
Move for second reading.
Councillor Pinsino.
I'll second it, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, Councillor Bondi seconded. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Foss and Councillor Crew.
So move.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Resolution of Council. Council C. McGregor, and we'll have Councillor Thompson wrap it up tonight.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn its meeting to the next meeting to be held Monday, September 27th, 2021, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. And as the mayor noted, again, next September 20th meeting will be postponed due to the election, and we'll be back on the 27th. So thank you very much.
And council, it's Judy. Just a reminder, we are logging back in to finish our closed session agenda. You can use the login from our 4 o'clock meeting, and we'll talk to everyone there. Thank you.